have nights cloaked to hide me from their eyes. But thou love me, let them find me here. My life were better ended by their hate than death broken.
I think what makes Leonardo DiCaprio so interesting as an actor, and I suppose a celebrity, is this idea, this restlessness within him, this constant debate that seems to be going on within himself about what is acting, what is this art form, what is the truth of it.
In that last glimmer of its eyes, there was a moment between us.
He's a character actor who the world thinks of as a star, as a matinee idol and as a hero. But he doesn't want to be that. He wants to be a really solid, hard-working character actor, throwing his all into creating these roles.
Now, the key to making money in a situation like this is to position yourself now before the settlement. Because by the time you read about it in the Wall Street Journal, it's already too late.
He's able to somehow not only create a character, but also to find the raw emotion of those characters that then he can express.
Leonardo DiCaprio was born on November the 11th, 1974, in Los Angeles. His family would be best described as countercultural. He often described them as hippie. His mother was a legal secretary, and his father, George, was an underground comic book artist.
His dad's friends, his circle was quite hippie, quite bohemian. So, for instance, Abby Hoffman, the leader of the Yippies, was often around, and one of Leonardo's earliest friends was Abby Hoffman's son, America. And he went through a progressive school, then went to the John Marshall High School. And by the time he got to high school, he was very disillusioned with his surroundings and with his education. His stepbrother, older stepbrother, was an actor, and he thought that that was the way he was going to escape from this world, but also get some money for his parents who were struggling. He really saw acting as an escape.
He made his acting debut in Matchbox car commercials, and from there started to pick up work in many other kind of commercials, as well as one or two small parts in daytime soaps, Santa Barbara, for example. And he was doing okay as a young man, as a young actor. Age 17, he auditioned for This Boy's Life, starring Robert De Niro, directed by Michael Caton Jones. He obviously stood out because he actually won the role of a young, troubled boy living with his mother, who then has terrible trouble with a stepfather, played by Robert De Niro.
Who made this? Did you make this? I'd love to live in a house with a cup of Java like that. You do? You need light? Oh, yes. There you go. Kids today, I tell you. Are you through, Jim? I do believe I am. I do believe I am.
This Boy's Life is based on the memoir by Tobias Wolff, and it's a story of coming of age, if you want, but a kind of a struggle. It's a struggle to become an artist. So there's lovely sort of parallels that run in the part and for DiCaprio's career. It's set in the 1950s, and Ellen Barkin is the single mother with Toby, her child, played by DiCaprio. And she's never managed to settle down. And she brings him to Seattle with the hopes of finding something permanent. He's something of a rebel and a free spirit, this young man. And she thinks a father figure is what will sort him out, which will get him kind of on the road to the future. So she becomes very focused and very determined this will be the case. And she meets Dwight in this wonderful town called Concrete near Seattle. And Dwight seems to be the perfect thing. He's polite, he's kind of moral, he's clear, but there's just something about him. He's the character played by De Niro, and there's just something about him that the young Toby tunes into. He doesn't add up. The mother is kind of headstrong. She's not really in love, but she says, this is the guy who's going to bring security for us. And they move in with Dwight. And pretty soon the friction rises between the young Toby and this Dwight. And Dwight, as that wonderful way De Niro can sort of unpeel characters, starts to reveal he's the bigger kid out of the two of them.
A little sick to my stomach.
Sick to your stomach? A hot shot like you?
Not a hot shot.
That's what I hear. I hear you're a real hot shot.
Robert De Niro took part in the later auditions, and he spotted that Leonardo DiCaprio was the right person. He lobbied for Leonardo DiCaprio to play the part. And it was the right choice because it's such a difficult thing to do in your first real job, to take the lead in a Hollywood movie, play aggressively up against Robert De Niro. The film is really a war between the boy and the man. Robert De Niro is this, he's got low self-esteem, he steals Leonardo DiCaprio's money, and Leonardo DiCaprio is trying to basically get away to join his older brother at college. And the scenes between them are ferocious acting, really genuinely troubling sequences with violence seething underneath them all. And the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio can, at the age of 17, hold his own in scenes like that, it showed that this was a serious talent. And for the film, he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor.
My mom wants me to become 18, and I'm having a big party, huh, Gilbert?
Yep.
When is that party coming?
6 days.
6 days is my party, and I'm coming 18. I'm 18, and you're not invited.
What's Eating Gilbert Grape, also in 1993, is his next film. Directed by Lasse Hellström, it is the story of a family who have a special needs son, played by DiCaprio, an older brother played by Johnny Depp, who has to basically look after the entire family. The mother is obsessively obese, and so Johnny Depp's character has to basically look after his mother and also his younger brother, who is constantly getting into trouble.
Leonardo DiCaprio spent a lot of time at schools for kids with learning difficulties, spent a lot of time around kids with various disabilities to try and capture the movements and try and capture the way of being. And what I think he does particularly well is he doesn't give you a feeling that this is a kid who's even particularly lovable. At times his behaviour is aggressive and unpleasant. Even in one of the most moving sequences where Arnie, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, discovers that his mother is dead, he doesn't play for sympathy there. He plays a kid who's furious, who's traumatized, and it's really hard to empathize with him because he's got the tics, he's got the movements, which he really captures the randomness of the muscle spasms that the kid is dealing with. He's not letting you in. He's not trying to appeal, beyond the camera and play a part that you empathize with and understand. It's an amazing portrait of someone struggling with learning difficulties, struggling with physical difficulties.
You scared me, buddy. You scared Gilbert.
Don't scare Gilbert, okay?
Don't scare Gilbert, okay?
Rightly so, DiCaprio would get an Oscar nomination for supporting actor for the film. And people who didn't know him were amazed to find that he wasn't actually neurodiverse, that he was just acting. There was this kind of amazement when the film came out. And it was absolutely a statement of not only intent, but of ability to critics and audiences that DiCaprio was an actor and was going to be adventurous and risk-taking and was going to do things his own way. And I imagine the agent taking one look at him would have sort of started showing him all these scripts for big Hollywood movies, big kind of commercial ventures. But DiCaprio was saying, I want to be Arnie. I want to be these kind of complicated characters, and I want to bring truth to things.
You don't know anything.
What are you talking about?
Go and clean toilets or whatever the hell it is you do. And when you're done, you can clean this one, all right?
Talk like that! What's the matter with you?
Gee whiz, Ma, gotta have these heart-to-heart talks more often. They're really good for us.
DiCaprio's next film was The Basketball Diaries, which is based on the memoir of Jim Carroll, the poet, punk rocker, and also former heroin addict who actually survived, came out the other side, and to become a very distinguished poet, in fact, of the period.
This is the first sort of 3 or 4 films in this young, very good-looking actor's life. He's made a very deliberate series of choices to play people who are tormented, people who aren't gorgeous, people who are dealing with terrible issues. And it's, he could have been playing pretty boys all the way through, but he's choosing the hard yards for this stage of his career.
There was a kind of darkness in The Basketball Diaries They're just sort of saying, you know, this American youth are imperiled, it seemed to suggest. But I think what it tells us is that DiCaprio is interested in that. He's interested in the darker side of things.
You know something? My friend Bobby, who is the best, and he's dead. This sucks, you know, this really sucks. It's not fair, Father.
Was that my father that went head so fast?
It was. What sadness lengthens Romeo's hours?
Not having that which having makes them short.
In love.
Out.
Of love?
Out of her favor where I am in love.
Alas, that love so gentle in his view should be so tyrannous and rough and proof.
Alas, that love whose view is muffled still should without eyes see pathways to his will.
Romeo and Juliet, as directed by Baz Luhrmann, is the turning point, I suppose you would say, in DiCaprio's career. It's the moment when his talent and his interesting choices are sort of met with an equal and opposite popularity and devotion. It's when, almost against his better judgment, he becomes a star.
It's set in modern Mexico City, and the Montagues and the Capulets are rival gangs rather than rival families. There's the drugs trade and there's violence, and they're using guns to take each other out. So it's a very modern version of the legendary story. And Leonardo DiCaprio wanted this role very badly. He went out to Australia to audition and really put himself on tape, tried to show to Baz Luhrmann that he was right for the role. And in the end, talked him around. Baz Luhrmann wasn't sure. At this point, Leonardo DiCaprio was beginning to be seen as a bit of too much of a star. He was beginning to have a bit of a reputation as a party boy, and Baz Luhrmann wasn't sure that he was a serious actor. But Leonardo DiCaprio proved through a series of tapes that he was.
Thus from my lips by thine my sin is purged.
Then have my lips the sin that they have took?
Sin from my lips? O trespass sweetly urged, give me my sin again.
He brought a freshness and an originality to the role of Romeo. Although the two of them didn't really hit it off to begin with, Claire Danes thought DiCaprio was immature, and DiCaprio thought Claire Danes was uptight. They clearly had a chemistry on screen, and I think as the shoot went on, that they really started to sort of work together very, very well. The chemistry, and also with the rest of the cast, DiCaprio was able to bring to the set a certain authority about how teenage boys, especially on the streets, would behave. And so he sort of almost mentored his fellow actors in the ways of perhaps the sort of wilder aspects of street life.
There's something about both of them, about both Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, which is fragile, and yet at the same time they have presence and power. It's a really hard balance. You believe them on the screen, they inhabit the screen, they're big actors, but they convey fragility and vulnerability, you know, in such a powerful way. Their eyes are, you know, so liquid when they look at each other. It's a phenomenal performance.
The way the film succeeded may have alarmed DiCaprio in the immediate aftermath. I don't think he was ready to become who he became. I think he saw it as a fascinating film with a great director and a chance to do Shakespeare. I don't think he quite anticipated becoming the heartthrob he'd always resisted, because that's what happened. He was on the front of every magazine. He was, you know, TV shows, cameras were following him. He went from this interesting young actor into an A-lister without him wanting to be, without him kind of knowing that's what the step he was taking. I mean, he was making Shakespeare. Was that going to make him an A-lister? And he wasn't quite ready for it. And I don't think he's ever been ready for it. I think he's gone on kind of resisting the pull of that. So he's almost an A-lister despite himself. But Romeo and Juliet was the film that made Leonardo DiCaprio the sweetheart of every girl in America.
Just the other night I was sleeping under a bridge, and now here I am on the grandest ship in the world having champagne with you fine people.
Titanic, directed by James Cameron, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, is a film in the way James Cameron is inspired, which is inspired by the ship, by the wreck, by this machine, and by the failure of the machine. And into the machine, they put the heart of the story, which is Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. The film wouldn't work no matter how good the technology that mocked up the wreck was, no matter how elaborate the special effects were. The film doesn't work if you don't care for the couple. And the couple are a very posh girl on her way out with her fiancé to America, and a poor kid who's lucked into the ticket and is down in third class, who happened to meet when she's about to commit suicide because she's not happy with her life. And he then has to charm her from the point of giving up her life all the way through to her struggle to stay alive in the freezing cold waters. He has to basically imbue her with life.
If you're a young actor who's just made Romeo and Juliet and is seeking maybe to sort of rediscover the kind of the artistic side of your early career, hopes of not letting your, the A-listness and celebrity get out of control, the worst film you could possibly choose maybe is Titanic. But that's the next film that DiCaprio did. But I think he did it for honest reasons. One of the prerequisites for James Cameron when he came to cast his film was that the boat was the star, that the two lead characters, this romance between Jack and Rose, had to be unknown or relative unknown actors because he didn't want it as a star vehicle. He's never liked A-listers particularly. They become A-listers, but Cameron wanted an innocence to them so that the celebrity wouldn't get in the way of the film.
It hits you like 1,000 knives stabbing you all over your body. You can't breathe, you can't think. At least not about anything but the pain.
The tenor of their romance, which is it's tricky on board, is completely convincing. There is no sense that this is sort of usual romantic, high-flowing sort of fakery. There's something about the way that they look at each other. There's something the way they play together. There's a playfulness about their relationship which is very, very genuine. And I think that probably came from their playfulness offset as well as on. It just fed into the movie, it fed into the romance of the film, and it gave it that extra little touch that it really needed to take it beyond just an extraordinarily impressive disaster movie into something that actually really pierces your heart.
Why did you do that? Why?
You jump high, jump right.
All right.
It's a hard role for an actor to do because it's one with no irony, no side, no undercurrent. It's just someone who is in love with life and lovable for it. And it's hard, those actors are rare, really. Actors that completely commit to someone who is absolutely lovable, trustworthy and beautiful. And he does it. He does it. He pulls it off superbly.
Whether he accepts it or not, he was a superstar in that film. He just gleamed again. And the 1-2 punch of Romeo and Juliet and Titanic, he was the biggest star in the world. The one thing he'd not wanted to be, the one thing he'd resisted, but the one thing that was inescapable, perhaps, was that he was just a superstar from that moment.
You realize that in the eternity of space, there's probably a planet out there, right? Just like this one, where another you is photographing back down towards us.
The beach was almost a riposte to Titanic, I think, for DiCaprio. It was a cool film. It was like the trendiest novel of the moment written by Alex Garland, the trendiest director of the moment in Danny Boyle, who'd made Trainspotting and become this sensation. And it was a story of backpackers going insane on this Thailand beach that's secluded from civilization. It was kind of, I suppose what it spoke to DiCaprio about was edginess again, a chance to look at the kind of foibles of the young, how we can turn in on ourselves. Essentially, it's the Lord of the Flies with young teenage backpackers. You can kind of see why Danny Boyle might be interested in taking on this story that's about another group of characters similar to Trainspotting who disintegrates. But here it's all about seeking a kind of utopia that they're after. So there's, in Garland's book, there is this secret beach that only certain people know about. And the secret comes to DiCaprio's character, Richard. And he goes on the journey and gets there to discover this community of supposedly like-minded individuals. Kind of a hippie community, if you want. Maybe there were echoes of his parents' life that he was drawn to, this kind of countercultural existence. And he starts to realise, Richard, that it's going to go sour, that it becomes a bit of an obsessive environment.
So as the whole thing starts to fall apart, he enters as almost like a Vietnam War film style character. He even has shots which are reminiscent of Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. There's very deliberate filmic references to that. And he's very good. He's got a huge range of roles, from this very bored, indolent American tourist all the way through to this crawling around in the mud, fighting for survival Vietnam vet, which is almost like he's inhabiting a series of characters throughout the film, all of which he does so very convincingly. He's got some great moments, and he does have a beautiful love scene where he looks, again, at his peak when he is so young and vulnerable and beautiful. There's a love scene in there where they're underwater, but then he pushes it away, crawls off into the jungle mud and starts fighting drug runners with a knife. It's an interesting performance. It's really well done, but you do get the sense that he's choosing it because he doesn't want to do the Titanic again.
Everyone has to see what it takes to get our little paradise secret. But I don't want to lie to you anymore, all right? I'm not a doctor. I never went to medical school. I'm not a lawyer or a Harvard graduate or a Lutheran. I ran away from home a year and a half ago when I was 16.
Frank? You're not a Lutheran?
Catch Me If You Can is Steven Spielberg's take on Frank Abagnale's autobiography. This is a guy who became a con artist at a very young age and who got himself into the most outrageous positions just by pretending to be other people. And he cast Leonardo DiCaprio, and it was a superb piece of casting. DiCaprio plays the son of Christopher Walken, who, as a kid, he really worships his dad and then watches his dad fall apart, and so sets out to live the life that he fantasized his dad had lived. And what DiCaprio does is he shows you the transformative steps that Frank takes each time he comes across a new character and inhabits it. So at one point he's going to impersonate a supply teacher, and you watch his tone of voice change, move up, his walk go from shy to confident, and he sort of morphs into this character.
It was almost as if he was born to play it. It's an extraordinary way, and it's a wonderful thing for an actor, because there is an actor playing an actor who plays several different roles in real life. So in a funny sort of way, you've got layer upon layer upon layer, which DiCaprio understood immediately. I think he actually got to grips with the whole idea of being inside not only his own character, but also how the impostures of various other characters that he takes on. And I think he enjoyed himself immensely. It clearly comes across in the film. It's one of Spielberg's most attractive movies. It's also one of the funniest. I mean, it's not essentially a comedy, because it is, it's a sort of, he's performing a sort of criminal enterprise, but it's done with such a lightness of touch, and it's done with such sort of joy that you almost want him to get away with it.
My name's Alan, Barry Allen, United States Secret Service. Your boy just tried to jump out the window. My partner has him in custody.
I don't know what you're talking about.
What, you think the FBI are the only ones on this guy? I mean, come on. Come on, he's dabbling in government checks here. I've been following a paper trail on this guy for months now. Hey, you mind taking that gun out of my face? Please, really. I mean, it makes me nervous.
There's a beautiful relationship between Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks in this. Tom Hanks being the FBI man who's out after him. The opening encounter between them is wonderful, where DiCaprio essentially convinces Hanks that he's another FBI officer just by chatting to him. And it's a superb scene. And then after that, you get the sense that Hanks is kind of charmed by him and also cares for him, because he knows this guy is young and he's out of his depth. And there's another great sequence where Hanks phones him in a hotel room, and through the call, you can see the vulnerability again in Leonardo DiCaprio. When he shows his vulnerability, he is almost like glass. He's breakable, and you can see him realizing as a young boy that he's out of his depth, and this is going to have to end at some point. It's a wonderful sequence. It's just this telephone call between this man who kind of loves the guy and wants to take care of the guy he's chasing, and this kid who is still a baby, really, and is now talking to a man who, almost is the father that he wished he had.
It's a great use of DiCaprio, great use of the things he represents, but I think you just feel Spielberg going, you're the most talented guy around. I know I want to show people. So let's just do this. It's a shame they've not worked together again. I think Spielberg was really good for DiCaprio because he allowed him to be the artist and the actor he wants to be, but he brought that commercial veneer as well. He allowed him to be a star at the same time. And I think as good as Titanic and Romeo and Juliet are, this is the only time in maybe DiCaprio's career where those two things are perfectly aligned.
Your hand? Steady. That's one thing I figured out about myself in prison. My hand does not shake. Ever.
The Departed is a Martin Scorsese film, and Martin Scorsese had worked with Leonardo DiCaprio before on Gangs of New York, but in The Departed he brings him out into a starring role. He is playing with Matt Damon, if you like, these opposites, these two characters who are completely the inverse of each other. It's set in Boston, in a gang war with the police. Jack Nicholson is the gangster who recruits Matt Damon to infiltrate the police, just as Martin Sheen recruits Leonardo DiCaprio to infiltrate the mob in Boston. And so throughout the film, Leonardo DiCaprio is always playing someone who isn't actually telling the truth, always pretending to be someone else. So, and what's so deceptive about these scenes is you're constantly having to remind yourself that he's not a gangster, that he's a cop, because he's getting further and further into the mob. He has to become a really successful mobster.
DiCaprio's performance in this is absolutely extraordinary. It's like a 24-hour panic attack. He did have probably a little help from Jack Nicholson, who was well known for being quite sort of spontaneous on set and actually go off the script from time to time. So there were moments when DiCaprio had no idea what he was going to do next.
You know, Frank, I look around at your other guys. I mean, they're all murderers, right? Right? And I think, could I do murder? And all I can answer myself is, what's the difference?
He has a beautiful relationship with Jack Nicholson, the mob boss, which is, you know, fatherly, mischievous, intense, violent. It's got all the elements of a man-on-man relationship, all the threat and the danger, but also just the fun and the joyousness of a Scorsese gangster encounter. And so if you think about Jack Nicholson, he is an actor that very few other actors want to be on screen with, because he will wrap up that scene and take it home in his pocket. But Leonardo DiCaprio absolutely will not let him do that. You know, they are fully equals on this. During the making of this, Jack Nicholson likes to improvise, so he would sometimes just change things around, bring a different weapon to set, and poor Leonardo DiCaprio had to get the props guy to text him and say, "What's Jack bringing to the set today?" just so he wasn't too surprised, so that he could match Nicholson's energy with his own, and it works. It's a phenomenal interplay.
This is groundbreaking in terms of Scorsese's career, but you're given the qualities of DiCaprio front and centre, that he could be in this very heightened, dramatic, action-driven thriller, that he would have long scenes with Nicholson, that he would be the lead in a huge ensemble that also includes Alec Baldwin, Vera Farmiga, Mark Wahlberg again, Martin Sheen, all these different characters. It's a huge cast. Yet you come out as the leading man. And DiCaprio is sensible enough to know that even though the atmosphere of the film is heightened and comic and pretty mad at times, he can't break that. He has to play it dead straight and hold on to that. And actually the Damon-DiCaprio dynamic is what keeps it in place and what makes it fun. And it's a massive hit. It's everything Scorsese had tried to be with Gangs and with Aviator comes to fruition with The Departed. He wins the Oscars. He has his box office hit. I mean, Scorsese must think, what the heck? You know, I do that and they ignore me, and I do this and they love me.
Inception is a Christopher Nolan film, and it's a script that he'd nursed for 10 years. It was a passion project for him, but he was particularly interested in the filmic techniques of penetrating different depths of dream. The idea behind the film is it's in a time when people can infiltrate other people's dreams and steal ideas. So it's that the Leonardo DiCaprio character, Cobb, is someone who specialises in going into people's minds while they're asleep and taking out industrial secrets and selling them. And when Leonardo DiCaprio arrived and was talking with Christopher Nolan, he could see that this script was superb to look at, but had no heartbreak. It had no soul, and therefore they spent a long time on the script together, a long time thinking about who Cobb was and why he did what he did and what his tragedies were.
If you studied that performance very closely, that he modelled him on the director Christopher Nolan himself, who is hugely intellectual, and what DiCaprio brought to it, which wasn't in the script, was a humanity and a character. He sat down with Nolan and he said, listen, this is a really fantastic idea, but if you can't follow the emotional path of this man, then it's going to be nothing more than a great idea. And, you know, look great, but it's not going to have any heart. And that's what DiCaprio brought to it. That's his gift. He can take a concept, and this is a concept movie, and actually bring to it a kind of flesh and blood reality that just makes it much deeper, more profound. Wonderful piece of work from him.
I paid $500, I want 5 goddamn fights. So what about my $500, huh? What about my $500? You gonna reimburse me? You even know what reimburse means?
If you've worked with Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese and Christopher Nolan and James Cameron and Baz Luhrmann, where do you turn next? Well, Quentin Tarantino, of course, you know, the guy who does things with movies, who doesn't just deliver another Hollywood movie, who shakes things up, who will guarantee you a character worth your time. And for DiCaprio, it was the chance to play a villain. Django Unchained is Tarantino's first Western. And it's a film, well, actually Tarantino called it a Southern, because it's set mostly in the American South, and it's about the slave trade. This is the backdrop. And Django, based on the famous Sergio Corbucci character, is Jamie Foxx's character. And he's a freed slave who teams up with Christoph Waltz's bounty hunter to go and rescue his wife, Django's wife, who's held at this plantation called Candyland, ruled over by Calvin Candy, played with wonderful flourish. You know, he's the devil in it, DiCaprio.
Hey! Now lay your palms flat on that tabletop! If you lift those palms off that turtle shell tabletop, Mr. Pooch is gonna let loose with both barrels that sawed off. There have been a lot of lies said around this dinner table here tonight, but that you can't believe.
DiCaprio's performance is very carefully pitched and very interesting. When we first meet him, he appears to be very urbane and sophisticated. He has this beautiful house and he has these very charming lines and these kind of wry humour. And he's almost likeable at the beginning, almost. I mean, you know that he's a plantation owner, but at the beginning he allows you to begin to like him. And gradually, as his sequence unfolds, he becomes darker and dirtier and more repulsive. And you get to see, there's a lovely tell, which is his teeth. His teeth are revolting. And that's the beautiful thing, the way that Leonardo DiCaprio gives up the screen to Jamie Foxx and sort of disappears into himself and shows the weakness of the class that he's playing. It's a remarkable performance.
An IPO is an initial public offering. It's the first time a stock is offered for sale to the general population. Now, as the firm taking the company public, we set the initial sales price, then sold those shares right back to our friends. Yet, look, I know you're not following what I'm saying anyway, right? That's okay, that doesn't matter. The real question is this: was all this legal?
The Wolf of Wall Street had been a project that DiCaprio had pursued himself, and he'd worked with Warner Brothers to buy the property. It's another memoir, another true story, and another dubious individual to get his teeth into. Jordan Belfort was a stockbroker, a Wall Street kind of individual, so we say, who basically was as big a crook as Frank Abagnale. He was a con man inside the system, taking people's money and making more and more money for himself using fraud and deceptive methods, and just thrilling to the possibility of all that lies beneath the American dream. He is the absolute archetype of American corruption. But what's brilliant about the idea, and brilliant about how Martin Scorsese, who eventually came onto the project, how he would approach it, was that Scorsese, you know, with DiCaprio, removes moral judgment from how they depict his life. They don't, you know, point the finger at him. what they do together is show you Jordan Belfort having the time of his life. And crime will catch up with him. You know, the cops, the FBI will catch up with him eventually, and he'll have to face up to the error of his ways. But Scorsese doesn't want the audience to know how to feel about it.
It's a remarkable performance. He constantly surprises Leonardo DiCaprio, and this film appears to be one thing, and then he flips it and makes it into something else. He's a very wily performer. And he earned another Academy Award nomination for Best Actor for the film.
He's afraid. He knows how far I came for him. Same as that elk, when they get afraid, they run deep into the woods. I got him trapped, he doesn't know it yet.
The Revenant is an incredibly intense film. It is a Western in one sense. It's about a group of trappers who lose their way and are being chased by a warring band of Native Americans, and the trapper, the guide, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, is attacked by a bear, mauled, and it appears to be on the point of death. So the party have to decide, do we stay with him or do we go? They pay Tom Hardy's character to basically stay with Leonardo DiCaprio until he dies, to give him a good death. And Tom Hardy takes the money and then isn't interested, and they abandon him. They bury him underground. I mean, this is why The Revenant is the title, because it's about someone who rises from the grave. And Leonardo DiCaprio then does, in this almost gothic horror film, zombie-style way, play a character who's holding his body together with sheer willpower.
For a guy who'd made Titanic, this was just another example of endurance as part of the acting arsenal. That if you're able to stand up to what this film asked of you, then you're at another level as actor. And that's DiCaprio for you. I think he would have been drawn to that. Maybe it's a little bit masochistic in some ways. It's certainly a valid, and completely realistic portrayal of the time and place and the violence of what it took to create America. Maybe it's typical of the Academy that after all these attempts, all these wonderful performers, it would take something as monumental and as hard as The Revenant to finally make them recognise that, okay, he's good, he does the stuff, doesn't he? I mean, what he went through, DiCaprio, to make The Revenant, you just want to give him the award just out of sheer, endurance. But he's more than that. He is the centre of that film, and he creates a kind of, I think in his mind, it's a kind of spirit of the environment, a kind of force of nature in a literal sense that he becomes. I think he wants to evoke that he becomes, The Revenant is more than just a character. It's sort of an evocation of something.
Well, it's official, old buddy. It has been.
What are you talking about? What did that guy tell you?
Told me the goddamn truth is what he told me.
Whoa, whoa.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood probably shows Leonardo DiCaprio at his most endearing, and certainly he is most relaxed. It also shows just how clever he is as an actor. Set in 1969, he plays a B-movie actor whose career is on the wane, and he has his best friend, in fact, is his stunt double, played by Brad Pitt. Together, they've sort of weathered the highs and lows of the profession, and they've sort of stuck it out together. It is actually a sort of love letter to Hollywood in many ways, but more than that, it's a love letter to the sort of slightly unsung actors.
What's lovely about it is that it's a complete surrender to the role. Now, Leonardo DiCaprio is reaching the point in his career where he works with the directors he loves and you get great things out of him. Scorsese, sees him in many ways almost as a muse, but there's something about the way he works with Tarantino which is particularly magical. It's the director who allows him to vanish the most into the role and to give up his DiCaprio-ness and become the person. In this, he really is the kind of slightly seedy, self-obsessed, self-absorbed, completely unnoticing actor who wanders around. He is the Dr. Watson to Brad Pitt's Sherlock Holmes in a way, because Brad Pitt is the guy who really clues in on everything that's going on while DiCaprio's worrying about his career and what his choices are. Absolutely fantastic comedy, but which switches really effortlessly into drama.
One step closer to going back to Missouri. So when this whole European journey is over, I think we've reached the end of the trail, Cliff.
It's something Tarantino does for him that no other director has done from him, is just really warm up DiCaprio and show us that he's got a wonderful sense of humour and a wonderful sort of sense of self-mockery in him. Because one of the jokes is that DiCaprio is the actor of his generation playing a B-list Western actor who's fading fast. And that's just a great joke at DiCaprio's expense. And boy, does he embrace it.
Hey! Hey! You're a good friend, Cliff.
Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the most versatile and energetic performers in Hollywood right now. And that's because at heart, he is a serious actor who takes character really, really seriously.
You get the sense perhaps that he was a kid who grew up watching. He grew up in a dangerous neighborhood with divorced parents, messy environment. A lot of the time, those sorts of people are watching, always watching. What are the signs of that person? Are they dangerous? What's going to happen to them? And those people absorb things a lot. And he's absorbed a lot of life experience by the time he becomes an actor. He's seen things before he became an actor that most people don't see in their lives. So he can bring that to bear as a performer and just happens to be beautiful, as opposed to beautiful people who then have to learn how to act.
He is like an author of his own career. He makes the films he wants to make. It's been remarkable in that sense that he has dictated his journey more than any other modern actor, I think. He has made the choices he wanted to make, and they have defined him. So yes, he was a heartthrob. Some probably remains a heartthrob. But he's so much more, and he's so interesting, and yet still is never quite recognized enough for that.
That was the best acting I've ever seen in my whole life.
Thank you.